So I will call the annual town meeting of the town of Rutland to order. At this time, I would like to ask our town clerk to read the warrant, please.
Posting of the warrant.
To either the constables of the town of Rutland in the county of Worcester, in the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town, qualified to vote in elections and in town affairs, to meet at the Glenwood Elementary School Auditorium at 65 Glenwood Road in said Rutland on Saturday, the 11th day of May 2019 at 7 o'clock in the evening, there and then to vote on the following articles.
At this time, I would like to call Father James Boland, the pastor of St. Patrick's Church, up here to say a prayer that we can get through this meeting tonight.
Good evening, everyone.
Speak very loud because of the fans.
Okay, I have to speak louder because of the fans. So let us just begin as we begin all things, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us remember the holy presence of God. God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and for the opportunity to gather as a community this evening. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your gifts in all things. Guide us to serve you as you desire. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew with the strength of your presence the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
At this time, I'd like to thank Father James. At this time, I'd like to call Sarah Wozniak, an EMT with the Rutland Fire Department, to come up and sing the Star Spangled Banner. At this time, I'd like everybody to rise.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much, Sarah. Folks, why don't we stay up? We're going to salute the flag at this time, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'd just like to introduce a few people as our normal annual town meeting. To my left is our town clerk, Anita Carlson. To her left is Lauren Goldberg, who is town council. Beside her is Michael Nicholson, who is the town administrator. Chairman of the board beside Mike is Sheila Dibbs. Beside her is Jeff Stillings, a selectman. Beside her is Leah Whiteman, another select person. Wayne Walker beside Leah, and Skip Clark. And we'd like to take an opportunity to thank Skip for all his years of service. This will be his last selectmen's meeting.
I want to thank you all. I really appreciate it.
To my right is the Finance Committee. Chairman Tom Rashaller is sitting directly beside me. Carol Martinez is sitting beside her. Carol Martins. Beside her is David Lucier. Beside David is Karen Norwell. And beside Karen is Lyndon Nichols, who also will be retiring after tonight's meeting. So if we could give Lyndon a round of applause as well. Folks, it's wonderful to see this many people here at an annual town meeting. I'd love to see this many here all the time just to see me talk one night. I would also like to make you aware of the fire exits in this building if we do have a situation. Over here to my far right is a fire exit. Over here to the far left is another fire exit over here by the police officer holding the wall up. And over there, the entrance that you came in is the third and final fire exit. As I stated, everyone, there is no fire exit over there, folks. Those that had looked over there is no fire exit over there. Everyone needs to have a green card, and there are a few people that will have a different color card. When we choose to do our votes tonight, we will ask you to raise your cards. All right? The other housekeeping rules that we're going to do tonight, which is part of the town bylaws, is everybody is only going to have an opportunity to speak on an article one time and one time only. And there is a time limit of 10 minutes per person. And I do have a timekeeper of that. I'm hoping we're not going to use it. I'm just making it clear up front. That's in our bylaws. My assistant town clerk, my assistant town moderator is Scott Davis. If there's something wrong with myself or the problem, he will also be the timekeeper for tonight as well. So, without further ado, we are going to get started. Article 1, to hear the annual town reports of the town offices and committees.
Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to hear the annual reports of the town officers and committees.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Recommendation of Finance.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 2, to see if the town will vote to fix the salaries or compensation of elected town officers for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, in ordinance with Section 108, Chapter 41 of the general laws as amended, or take any action thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to fix the salaries of, or compensation of elected town officials for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, in accordance with Chapter 41, Section 108 of the general laws, with the sums as follows. Moderator, $75. Selectman, $3,000. Town clerk, $67,062.40. Assessors, $1,500. Board of Health, $750. Planning Board, $2,500.
I second.
Motion has been made, seconded. Recommendation of the finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your cards. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're going to move on to Article 3. To see if the town will vote to amend the town zoning bylaws by inserting a new zoning bylaw article entitled Development Rate Limitations Bylaw on file with the town clerk to limit the maximum number of building permits for new residential dwelling units that could be granted by the Inspectional Services Department, and to authorize the town clerk to assign appropriate numbering to this bylaw in order that it will be in compliance with the numbering format of the zoning bylaw or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend.
You got it?
Is it on?
You're going to talk into it. It's on. It's on. You're going to have to talk very loud because the fans are moving air, please.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the town's zoning bylaw by inserting a new zoning bylaw entitled Development Rate Limitation Bylaw as set forth in the handout provided.
Does this motion receive support?
Second.
A motion is made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance Board.
The Finance Committee recommends inaction on this article.
The recommendation of the Planning Board, please.
The Planning Board recommends that this bylaw be referred back to the Bylaw Subcommittee.
Recommendation of the Selectmen, please.
The Select Board recommends favorable on this article. The vote was 4-1.
Is there any discussion on this article? Just a moment, please, sir. At this time, there is a presentation. There are two presentations tonight that have asked to give a presentation on this article. One will be given by Mr. Pantos, and then there'll be another one given momentarily thereafter, please. Your 10 minutes has started. Thank you.
It's a magic picture, huh?
I'm sorry.
5 minutes are up. Oh,
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, folks. My name is Mike Pantos, and I've lived here. Can you hear me now? All right, thank you. Good evening, folks. My name is Mike Pantos, and I've lived here in Rutland for 27 years, since 1992, when my wife and I built our home here. I have served on the Board of Selectmen for 8 years and also represented the town of Rutland to the Bay Path Regional Vocational School Committee, as well as the Wachusett Regional School Committee. I understand that two groups of folks can share a common goal, but yet they have completely different ideas as how to reach that goal. It doesn't imply that either group has bad intentions. I think that at this time, the case regarding this controversial vote tonight that we're about to look at, I know that many here are out of concern for your taxes. What was one of the principal focuses of the study that was commissioned by the town, the study report was done by the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. Because of this initial study and the conclusions that were reached, the second study was commissioned, which is ultimately led to this bylaw. All of this material is available for folks, and I'm sure they've seen it on the town website. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read it, because this presentation will take it, make sense to you. I intend to show not only some glaring omissions, but also some very troubling reporting for those that are concerned about their taxes. Before you vote tonight, please consider the presentation from both sides and make an informed decision. Thank you.
just a PDF?
Yep. Okay. I want to bring that up. Yep. This is taken directly from the Phase 1 study. There's a table showing revenue and expenditures estimates for new growth in the first column. The second column shows the estimates added to the base value of the budget, showing an estimated budget that includes new growth. The report goes on to say that if the ratio is a value of 1, it's indicated that the revenues and expenditures are equal. A value less than 1 means expenditures are greater than revenues costing the town money. Looking at that table provided in the report, it shows a ratio of 0.95. That would suggest that the new growth will cause a deficit in the budget. This is the conclusion that's stated later in the report. One important thing to know is that the ratio is prior to the estimated growth figures added. If the ratio was 1 or more before the new growth estimates, that would clearly show that the new growth estimates are negatively impacting the budget. Unfortunately, that information is not found in this report. This provides the information that was absent in the report. Note that when the new growth numbers are backed out and the ratio is largely unchanged, other than the rounding factor, this omission raises serious concerns as to the reader is only shown the value after the new growth estimates, leading the reader to falsely believe that the only reason for the new budget shortfall is due solely to the new growth. This is not clear in this case. On page 3 here, there are also other parts of the report that raise serious concerns. Notice this page is taken from the report that shows how the new growth revenue and expenditures are calculated. Central Mass Regional Planning Commission estimates the population from the 400 new homes in the study as 3.4 individuals per household. However, notice the very next line that shows that they had actual census data showing it's actually 2.6 per household. The chart in the middle of the page shows that there may be a bias for using 3.4 instead of the census data. A sample size of just 3 streets and used that to be explored the potential of all the new growth. While there is an explanation that the growth is a sample would best represent the growth from the 400 lots. It ignores the actual data that had in their possession that presented the town's true makeup. It's also noting that in Phase 2 study, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission did not elect to use the 3.4 people per household, but rather 2.71, which I do not understand why. The next thing to note, highlighted near the bottom of the page, is that the assessed values of the 400 new homes, the estimate value per lot was $271,000. Again, the very next line shows that there had an actual average sale value for the past 10 years of a single-family home. The actual average value has been $370,000. There's an explanation, and it stands that it can be accounted or based for different methods to calculate assessed values versus sale price. The valuation data is one of the more misleading pieces of the data on what seems to be the entire report. A 5-minute call to the town assessor would have revealed that the assessed value will be within 5% of the sales amount. This devalued assessment is particularly troubling for 2 reasons. The first is it highlights at the bottom of the page, it states, given the need to generate more conservative estimates, this lower number is considered acceptable. It is also telling because another value that was uncovered during these studies is that the break-even value for an assessed property, if the value of the property is less than $300,000, it costs the town more in services than it generates in revenue. Therefore, any property valued above $300,000 provides a positive cash stream to the town. Then was chosen a value that was known to show a cash deficit in the budget despite having the actual average sale amount. On this 4th page, in order to show the revised budget estimates used in the proper values, this page quickly points out how the data for the other revenues was added to the table. It is used other forms of the town income, such as fees, excise tax, etc., that come up with a non-property tax revenue of approximately $550 per capita. Lastly, the study establishes per capita expense based on the average expense prior to town budgets and population data. As you can see, the report shows approximately $2,076 cost per person. And this page from the report shows difference in the estimated growth values using numbers from Central Mass Regional Planning Commission versus the actual numbers. The only 2 values that were changed to form the results are boxed near the bottom, as highlighted. The census data of 2.6 was used to calculate the new resident population, and the actual average sale price minus 5% was used to assess the value. Notice the difference is over $1 million. This table takes the base value showing the net cash flow, forecast and ratio, then adds the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission's growth estimates, again showing the cash flow and ratio, then totals into the last column that mirrors the table of the study. There are minor differences due to rounding, but this shows that the calculations you're about to see are diverged with the same methodology and formula. This last table takes the base values without any growth estimates, then adds the new growth based on the actual census data and the average home sale. Note the positive cash flow, and also note that the ratio for the new growth is nearly 1.4, adding new growth in prices that homes are selling for our town, and has driven the overall ratio to 1.1. That's the table that should be have been in the report. In summary, the presentation new growth and consists of homes greater than the break-even value benefits the town budget. This has a direct impact to our taxes. The budget also includes schools. By the way, separate talking point at this regarding the cost of students, but the budget does include those costs as shown. The new growth closes the budget gap and may soon lead to significant surplus depending on the vote tonight. Limiting the growth, as the bylaw specifies, only cuts off home sales in the years where the housing market is thriving. During those years when the market demands its highest prices, which is the most lucrative to the town, new residents coming into the town will have a higher tax payment due to the higher value. If the real reason for choosing to support this bylaw is concerning for your taxes, then the vote for it will actually be harming the budget and putting our taxes in jeopardy. There may be growth management bylaws that I do support. This is not one of them. The vote tonight is not on the principle of growth management, but on this specific bylaw. By limiting the new growth on such numbers, the number, by the way, which is nearly identical to the average number of building permits that the town is struggling with, the budget is proved to be wrong just by looking at the historical data. Thank you for your listening and consideration. And again, I do support a growth management plan, a 3, a 5, a 7, and a 10-year budget plan, which is not in process.
You're over your time.
Thank you.
This will be our second presentation. We're going to have a second presentation at this time.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Jeff Stillings with the Board of Selectmen. I am also the designee to the Managed Growth Steering Committee, which is an ad hoc committee made up of various members of the town's boards, Planning Board, Board of Health, Conservation Commission, as well as technical advisors from the town, our town administrator, DPW director, and the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. So the actual name of the bylaw before you is the Development Rate Limitation Bylaw. It's a bit of a misnomer that we sometimes call it the Managed Growth Bylaw because it is, to call it a Managed Growth Bylaw infers that it's part of an overall strategic plan, which is not the case. There are 4 key components to the proposed bylaw before you, which could also be called the number of building permits bylaw. Number 1, it sets a limit of 36 permits that can be issued for new residential housing units a year. The second, it limits permits to 25% for any one individual builder. It provides reasonable exceptions for senior housing, low income, approval not required lots, and anything related to the Rutland Heights. It also has a sunset provision of 5 years. It expires after 5 years, for which it can be reevaluated and extended. We've been here before, folks. In 2002, you'd see a very similar bylaw presented to the town. 2003, at the annual town meeting, the measure failed to meet the 2/3 majority needed by only 19 votes. The timeline before you, I submit, began in late 2016 for the process before you tonight. In late 2016, our town administrator at the time reached out to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission to try to find out what the potential impact would be of 400 approved housing units on the town. As a result, CMRPC obtained a grant, and through the grant, they were able to provide a complex analysis presented back to the town in 2 separate phases. In December of 2017, Phase 1 was presented to the town by CMRPC. In April of 2018, our town administrator advised that she was leaving and proposed that we create the Managed Growth Steering Committee of various members. 2 minutes? Okay. From various boards. And this was back in April of 2018. We had our first meeting in August of 2018. That timeline, which I just showed, represents a meeting or an event that took place with the steering committee. Phase 2 was presented in February of 2019, of which CMRPC presented 6 options. Only one of them is presented before the townspeople tonight, and that is the enacting of a managed growth bylaw. Since then, we've been actively in March meeting with the various boards, the select board, the planning board, and the steering committee to pursue the bylaw before you. We had a joint meeting with the planning and select board. The consensus was 30 permits per year. It was adjusted up to 36 permits before you today, and also adjusted down to a sunset of 5 years to be reassessed. Okay, thank you.
So the proposed bylaw was developed based upon the recommendations and input from several boards and commissions, and after a public hearing, as you just have heard. The bylaw consists of 9 sections and is modeled after the town's prior attempt in 2002. The Cape Cod Commission model bylaw and several growth bylaws from towns in Worcester County. And for reference, the bylaw consists of 9 sections. I believe in your packets you should have a copy of the bylaw. What I'll be talking to tonight is just the structure and the technical aspects of the bylaw. Section 1 sets forth the purpose and intent and will be further addressed in other aspects of this presentation. And the next section is a limit on the bylaw which would allow for the issuance, and it would only affect dwelling units that are new. Section 3 is a limit on the number of building permits for new residential dwelling units to 36, unless otherwise exempted or allowed by special permit. In the next section, which is a limit on the number of permits per month, which would be to 3, and to no more than 25% of the allowed permits to any one applicant. Section 5, which provides for the exemptions for certain instances, such as for age-restricted housing developments for those 55 and older. In the next section, Section 6 allows for an increase in the total number of permits that may be issued and an increase in the per applicant limit for certain types of housing development where the planning board has evaluated the benefits of a specific project and has granted a special permit. Section 7 is a protection for lots that may be adversely affected by the bylaw, which would result in the lot losing its zoning protections. Section 8 is a section which provides that the term of the bylaw is for 5 years with a renewal by a vote of town meeting for up to 5 years. Prior to any further action for a renewal, the section requires an evaluation as to the effectiveness of the bylaw. And Section 9 is standard language, which is a severability clause, which basically indicates that if any one section is found to be invalid, the remainder of the bylaw would remain in effect. In the next part of the presentation, the results of the studies and other financial information is going to be shown. Thank you.
So hello, my name is Ron Barron. I'm with the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. I worked with some of my colleagues on both of the studies that were part of this project. Wanted to just take a little bit of my time to say something very quickly. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. As far as the outcome of this vote, I don't have a personal stake in whether or not this particular thing passes. The only goal that this has ever had was to assess whether or not the town of Rutland needs or should have a comprehensive growth management strategy. And based on the data that was available to us and the analysis that we did, I think that that answer is in the affirmative. That's something that the town should pursue. To that end, a bylaw such as this can be a tool, provided it is the limited duration and is accompanied by other planning measures. So that's the only point that we have on that. I also would just like to talk very quickly about some of the data analysis we did as part of that. One of the things that's a little bit confusing is that the first piece and the second piece are really looking at two different questions. The first question was, we have 400 subdivisions, we know that they're done, what is the impact if they were all built out? That's why we looked at sample subdivisions. We did only look at 3 streets, but those 3 streets had 56 houses and 117 total residents. So it was a suitable sample size to be able to make an assessment whether or not that was representative of the type of subdivisions that the town is seeing. And that's where that number came from. When we did this one, we're looking at the town as a whole. It's a very different question. So that's why we were using the smaller 2.71, which is based on what we know, the actual population based on town annual reports, and the town household sizes based on the data that we have available. What we did with this is we did a build-out analysis because we wanted to be able to say how much capacity does the town still have, and if that was built out, what would that potentially do to the water and sewer resources in particular. We looked less at the finance than we did at the last one, largely because that was something that is obviously tricky to assess. If you read the report from phase 1, it's a 4-page report, and probably about 30% of it is us admitting that there are strong limitations to what we had to work with, and we needed to do more data. And this is what we did out of this. The essential point is that we took the entire town, we looked at how much land was available, we took out everything that was unbuildable, and we tried to make a distinction between land that is currently within or next to the existing water and sewer versus land outside of it, so we could get a better sense of how much water and sewer it would actually impact. So these are the basic things. We know that there's about there's almost 7,000 acres of developable land town-wide. We know that, can you actually go back to that one? We know that that would yield about just under 5,000 units based on current regulations. And that within the water and sewer district, there's a number of acres, and there's about 1,400 potential units in there. Now, again, this is not saying that this is what we think you're going to see. It's just the question, when we looked at the number of permits that you're generating every year, new housing units, is it reasonable to think in 5-10 years, if you're seeing 50 units a year, you're seeing even 36, which was, I believe, the 5-year or the 10-year average, how much more housing can you see? Are you actually going to hit the wall? And it seems like you have enough land to support more development, and it's going to keep coming. And that was the thing that we were concerned about. Can you go back to the, you can? Okay. Well, the important thing that we were trying to get a piece on, how much time do I have left? None. Oh, okay. Well, I have no more time to talk, so thank you.
Hi, we have 30 seconds. We're going really fast, and maybe some of this will come out in the questions. Here are our areas of concern. Here is the debt that we've been carrying. Ideally, you can read that very quickly. We've been carrying a lot of debt since before 2008 when we built a lot of things. Here is our credit rating, which dropped in 2010 because our stabilization was being used and because we had too much debt relative to our income. Here is our new growth by year. Here is the tax base and rate. You'll note that the taxes started creeping up, and that was because we were recovering from extreme expansion prior to that. Here is the median property tax bill. You can see it was also creeping up even before the 2007 recession. Here is 40B information. I would be happy to have more discussions about that. I know it's come up. And here is the WRSD enrollment and budget per year. Our numbers have been flat since 2007, and yet there is the percent change in the WRSD budget. Here is our education cost per pupil. Cost of education, straight for Rutland, this year, $77.80 per pupil. Tax bill average, you can see it there, and the tax bill on the bottom, if we were to tax the highest price house on the market at its market rate, our taxes brought in would be $87.64 for one house.
Is there any other discussion on this article? And if you have discussion, please, just in the essence of time, please proceed to the mic behind the gentleman in the orange shirt, if you'd like to, just to save time. Please state your name, address.
Tim Narwald, 149 Palmagussit. I want to make it clear I'm speaking as a citizen, as a planning board member. Based on what I've seen in the two presentations and what I've seen as this bylaw has gone through the committee, the bylaw subcommittee, which only had approximately 2 weeks to work on it, I'd like to move to amend the main motion to instead refer the proposed bylaw to the bylaw subcommittee for further review.
Does this motion receive support? Second. A motion has been made and seconded. We will have discussion on this motion.
It's a motion.
And we need this in writing. 2 copies to give it to town clerk. Well, one is fine for now, I guess. So we're discussing just Mr. Norwell's amendment right now. Is there any discussion on Tim Norwell's amendment?
Am I allowed?
Yeah, if you're a selectman, there. If you're a person, you're out there.
I just want to explain the process, if that's okay. If we take Mr. Narwald's motion tonight, the bylaw will have no action tonight. It will not fail. It will not pass. It will be sent back, possibly to be brought up again in the future. If we take action on the motion tonight and it fails, it cannot be brought back in a period of 2 years unless the planning board is in favor of bringing it back. If we pass the motion tonight, and again, not the amended motion, but the original motion, if we pass it, then the bylaw passes.
Is there any other discussion? We're only talking about the amendment, Mr. Mike, face me, please.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, I am in full support of the Planning Board's recommendation. I believe this bylaw, growth bylaw, is needed, but in its current form needs to be revised, and I think it's prudent that it go back and be revisited and brought back to the town floor for vote in a better format than it is currently presented.
Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Is there any other discussion?
Hi, Mr. Moderator. Chris Senecles, 64 Glenwood Road. I'd just like to ask a question to the gentleman. What is the purpose? What's his reason? If they, I believe the planning board put this forth, but now they're changing that? Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
I'm talking as a citizen. I'm not on the planning board when I'm putting this amendment out.
Okay, so you're talking as a citizen.
Correct, that's how I said, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just clarification before we get too far into this. If someone chooses to move the question, and there is a line after them, the question is moved there and it ends debate if it passes in a motion, just to clarify it.
Sir, Jeff Stillings, Lord Lane. I just want to expand upon one of the comments on the product itself of the bylaw. It was unfortunate that the presentation was abbreviated. However, if you caught the slides, the individual slides presented by our town planner, it showed the specific source of the motive behind the 9 sections of this bylaw. And the source for this bylaw was taken from the best practice models, one of them being the Cape Cod Commission model. It's a well-known best practice model for growth management zoning bylaws. The other source, at the request of the planning board, was the 2002 bylaw attempt that was used as the basic framework to build off on there. So if you looked at the dissection of the 9 different sections, each one of them was from a best practice example. Nothing was rushed, nothing was thrown in there haphazardly. Thank you.
Peter Pacer, 20 Highland Park Road. Question for the maker of the motion. What exactly are the revisions that you would be looking for in this if it is referred back to committee?
You don't have to answer that. You're welcome to answer if you choose to. You don't have to answer it. What's that? The question that the gentleman before Mr. Norwell standing up was, he was asking what revisions potentially would be coming forward, I believe is.
To answer that in a general format, I just think that the bylaw wasn't given enough time in the subcommittee to have them effectively review it and see if there was anything that could be added or deleted from it. So my answer to your question is, I think they just need more time to make it an effective bylaw, and that's the reason why I made this motion, is to bring it back to the subcommittee and let them give it a thorough look over.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Is there? State your name and address, please.
Clee Blair, 8 Heritage Hill Drive. As far as Tim's motion is concerned, how does that, what do we, when we vote on that, is that a majority? Is it 2/3? Is it 1/3? How does that work?
That is his amendment is majority.
So it's a majority vote?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all we're voting on at this moment is the amendment that the gentleman in the orange shirt made. And we all understand what we're voting on. It's going to be referred back to the committee for further study. Move to amend the main motion to instead refer the proposal bylaw to the bylaw subcommittee for further review. Correct, Mr. Norwell? And everybody understands what a vote means on this, correct? All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. It is defeated. We're going back to the original motion. Is there any discussion on the original motion? Is there any discussion on the original motion?
Michelle Van Riet, 230 Charnock Hill Road. Mr. Moderator, I'd make a motion to have it by ballot vote, since there are people here who are employees and vendors of the people involved.
A motion has been made to have a paper ballot. Does this receive some support? A motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? We're going to vote on this. Is there any discussion on that? Head on down. While he's coming down, I'll explain the process if this does pass. You're going to hate me. Just wait just 1 second, please. If we have a paper ballot, and I understand everybody wants to, people are entitled to do that. It's my wish in the past, and I'm going to keep it tonight, that you're probably going to object to, is where everybody that chooses to vote is going to have to leave the hall, get checked back in, and you're given 2 pieces of paper, a yes and a no. You put whichever ballot you want to into the silver box, and then the town clerk has 6 people that will count that, and you throw the other paper out. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Don't hate me. Why? Go ahead.
My question is how long it would take. That was exactly my question.
Probably longer than it took you to check in, if you're wondering. Is there any other discussion on the paper ballot? Is there?
Joe Becker, 18 Crestview Drive. Just a point of clarification. That motion took place before there was a lot of discussion. Maybe that was the intent, that people didn't want to further debate the article. But if this passes, does it immediately go to a ballot, or is there room for discussion after it? Okay, thank you.
In my ruling, there's discussion afterwards. It just,
okay.
Someone asked me about it, and I said I needed a motion to do it, so it doesn't matter when the motion comes. Is there any other we're talking only on the paper ballot. Come over to the mic, state your name, please. Oh, well, yes. After every ballot has been cast, while the counting people are counting, we will continue to move on, and there'll be 6 people that are angry because they can't hear what's going on. But yes, I'm sorry.
Tom Allen, 24 Edson. This is paper. If we write yes or no on it, would it not suffice?
No, not in my opinion. Is there any other discussion? Only one question. You're done. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? If you don't want to vote the way that it was proposed, you can vote no and come up with another motion, but.
Chris Senical, 64 Glen Road. Is this a 2/3 or is it a majority?
No, it's a majority on the paper ballot.
On the paper ballot's a majority.
That is correct. Because if it's 2/3, I'm going to make you count the same way. You don't want that. Is there any other discussion on the paper ballot? Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of voting with a paper ballot tonight, please raise your card. All those opposed, same sign. Relatively clear, we're not voting with paper. It is defeated. Is there any other discussion on the original motion? Is there any other discussion on the original motion? Is there any other discussion? You're going to have to move faster to the mic just to save time, folks.
Todd Robbins, 9 Watson. Just a quick question. I got 1 or 2 mailings in the mail with information. There was one mailing here that I just don't know who it came from. Was this a town? Was this? Somebody, if somebody has an answer, that'd be fine, but that's all I have.
The mailer was not from the town of Rutland.
The mailer that he raised up is not from the town of Rutland, per the selectman. Is there any other discussion? Is there any? We're only, what's that? the motion.
Along with the cost.
State your name.
Susan Mampre. And along with the costs and the water resources, we really are not considering roads into this area. Right now, there's gridlock at least twice a day on the roads. There aren't places to put new roads to come out to this area. So I don't think you're thinking about how people access this area, as well as the water, which is a finite supply, as we've said. And the cost of the pupils don't in any way keep up with the taxes. We need development, but we need commercial development.
Can you state, ma'am, address? Where do you live?
I can't hear you.
I need to know where you live so the town clerk.
Briarwood Road.
Number?
8.
Thank you. Mr. Senecal? Sorry. Make it quick. You are correct.
Chris Senecal, 64 Glenwood Road. I am against this growth management plan. There was a very well done presentation by both sides, but this does not take into effect the need for business. We have 60 acres at the Rutland Heights property that during the best economy in the last 20 years, we have not been able to naturally, economically, through free economics, bring in business community. Now we are going to restrict the quantity of homes. If you're someone that wants to start a business, I started mine 20 years ago, it's down in Worcester, I have 120 employees now. I can promise you if I was going to start a pizza shop in Rutland, I'd want to make sure the town was going to grow and support my business. We're going to cut the quantity of people in town every day, so the existing businesses are going to lose business. The Dunkin' Donuts is going to slow down. The pizza shops will slow down. The restaurants will slow down. Maybe the Dunkin' Donuts is a good thing. I hate the place too. But listen, the bottom line is we're not sending the right message. And don't think that Sterling and Holden and all the other surrounding towns are not going to want to scoop up that business and continue their tax growth in base. So please think about this management. The planning board gentlemen wanted to rework this because they know too. It's just, we got 5 years of this, guys. The end of this economy is coming soon. It always comes and goes. So please think about this. You're locked into something for 5 years. And by the way, that's the Supreme Court that says this is actually unconstitutional to do forever. The Supreme Court says you have to cap it at 5 years. So don't make it sound like they're doing us a favor just to look at it in 5 years. That's the Supreme Court law, okay? Please, our expenses are going to continue to go up. It's a fact of life, okay? There was...
Please, you can't, don't address that. You can't shout from the audience.
The taxes and the expenses in this town are going to continue to rise. It does for every business. It does for every home. The DPW equipment's not getting cheaper. Healthcare costs for all town employees as well as private businesses is not getting cheaper. These are the challenges this town needs to embrace with the proper leadership and the people that want to take these challenges on and accept it. If we are not careful and we get this snowball in the wrong direction, folks, it's going to be economic problems. Like when it gets bad, the state's going to want more money. Just look at how tight it was back in 08 and 09 here in this town when the state wanted more money and had less money to give us. School budgets continue to go up. It's a fact of life. Please think about this before you really, really vote. Thank you.
Over here that chooses to speak that isn't able to get up easily. That's why I'm bringing it to him. Don't think he's super special.
I am.
You are.
George Farrington, 21 Sherrill Drive. You talked about business. Well, there was a building boom back in the early 2000s. I was part of it. I made a ton of money. Where's all the business in town? There's a laundromat, there's a liquor store, there's a Dunkin' Donuts. Two Dunkin' Donuts and a Honeydew. Whatever. New houses isn't going to bring new business. Volume does not equal profitability. Volume does not equal profitability. It just doesn't. And I've started businesses too, and I want a community to support me. You know? But building another 400 houses over the next 5 years, how are we going to support the kids? What's going to happen if somebody falls down and breaks their arm, has a heart attack? As long as everybody gets paid. No fire department though, no police department, no EMTs, no nothing. But just get the houses built. There's plenty of other places to build, folks. We don't have to build here in Rutland. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Moderator. Tressa Santillo, 124 Charnock Hill Road. I want to speak to the hidden costs of rapid growth expansion by providing one example. I'm a librarian and I work for an organization that provides services and resources to libraries of all types in the Commonwealth. First, to speak to the last gentleman's point, if you don't use our Rutland Library or care about it, you should. Research shows that stronger libraries equal stronger communities in many ways, not least of which, economically, which we all care about. Rutland's population is nearing 10,000. When we hit 10,000, the Rutland Free Library will bump up to the next population tier, which means that the state's requirements for the library will change. The library will need to be open a minimum of 40 hours a week, more than now, and the next new director that comes in of the library must have an advanced library degree, both which will cost the town more money. Failure to comply with these requirements within the allowed grace period will result in the library losing its state aid and certification, which may cut the library off from valuable services and resources such as borrowing books and materials from other library, as well as critical state funding that our library cannot survive without. Yes, our town will eventually reach a population of 10,000, but without the passage of this bylaw, we will arrive at that number much more quickly and will be forced into action before the town is able to allocate additional funding for the library. This is but one example of probably many of the hidden costs of the result of the rapid growth in town. I am sure that there are countless others. I urge everyone to vote yes on this measure. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
Michael Pintos Jr., 19 Watson Lane. So I'm an engineer, and it's all great and fine designing something like this, like a plan, but it never implements the way you think it's gonna. So I just want to propose an amendment to make it mandatory to review the bylaw after 1 year instead of 5.
You have to put that in writing.
I can do that. Do you have a piece of paper?
So an amendment has been made to review after 1 year instead of 5. Does it receive support? Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Is there any discussion on the amendment? Is there any discussion on the amendment? So you're only talking about the amendment. Please state your name and address.
Steve Kosminski, 37 Highland Park Road. The review in 1 year, is that also the sunset provision, or do we still have the 5-year sunset provision, but we review it in a year?
We're getting clarification of that answer right now. Is there any other discussion on this article while we're waiting for clarification? So is there a sunset? Does it sunset in 5 then?
No, it's not changing the sunsetting. It's leaving the sunsetting, but it's just saying this bylaw shall be reviewed by the planning board after 1 year.
So this is being clarified by town council and the gentleman that made the motion, the amendment, is it's going to be reviewed after 1 year. It doesn't change anything else. It will still have a 5-year sunset clause in there. You're welcome to come up. We're only speaking about the amendment that is made. Name and address, please.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Karen Healy, 9 Watson. I don't know that a year is going to provide any more information than what we already have. If you think it will, maybe somebody can explain that. Thank you.
Do you want to explain that? She wants to know that is 1 year enough to make a review or not?
Michael Pantos, 19 Watson Lane. We can do 2 years. All I'm saying is that you need to you need to review it after a short period of time. I'm making the motion for 1 year to add to the amendment, amend that to the bylaw. But you need to review it. We need to see how it affects the community. I don't care what the stats say. It's not going to go exactly how you think it's going to go.
Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Is there any other discussion? So we're going to vote, majority vote, on this amendment about a 1 year review. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. It is defeated. We're going back to the original motion again. Is there any discussion on that? Is there any discussion on the original motion?
Desiree Mangum, 10 Arlene Drive. I did go to a recent meeting for school funding, and I do know that the state is looking at revising their state funding, and they're looking at towns in this area and looking at possibly reallocating that money toward this area and helping us out a little more. So I know that part of that school funding issue that people are worried about could be taken care of by the state if we get involved to bring some of that money that they're looking at reallocating to us.
Good evening, it's Brett Andrews of 42 Michael Drive. I guess my question would be, so the way I see it is regardless of how this vote goes, population here in Rutland is just going to grow anyway. So if you do vote yes and limit the number of new homes built, what's going to, the way I see it is just the builders are going to prioritize building houses listed in the exemptions. So if I could receive some clarification on that, that would be great. Thank you.
I'd like to make David Danza, 9 Cameron Drive. I'd like to make a motion to cut off debate and vote on the measure.
Can you restate your name? The town clerk did not hear it. Yes.
Danza, 9 Cameron Drive.
Thank you. So now, to cut off debate is a 2/3 vote. Normally, when we do a 2/3 vote on a much smaller crowd, I always have people count them. And I do that because I don't want to have a gray area where it's really close. If there's no objection, I would ask for a vote to allow me to make a decision that by the number of cards I see go up versus the number of cards that don't go up, or yes and no's, that I have the ability to make the decision. If I don't feel extremely confident, I will ask for a count. But in turn, if it's obvious, then I don't want to have, if there's 3 people that say on one and 726, thank you. Is there a second? All those in favor, is there any discussion? All those in favor of giving me the ability to make the decision, please raise your cards. Wow, thank you. Appreciate that. So, all those opposed? All right, good. All right. No, we got one smart ass over here. Wow. So, we're going to vote on his motion. There's no debate on that. So all those in favor of limiting debate eliminates debate, please raise your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So the two-thirds vote declared. So now we are going to vote on the original motion, and everybody understands what that is. We have no amendments that have gone through, with the exception of limiting the debate. So everyone is understanding what we're voting on, correct? Clarification, this is two-thirds. We just voted on, I have the ability to make the decision if it's obvious, if it's close, we will do it. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. We're voting on the original motion to approve the bylaw. Thank you. Can I allow him to do that? Not if you listen, Mr. Well, I apologize. We will take the vote again. Do you choose, do I have a motion on the floor to give me the ability to make the decision on a two-thirds vote if it's obvious? If it is close, then we will. On the main motion, Article number 3. So moved over. Second. All those in favor of giving me the ability to declare a two-thirds vote on the original motion, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Motion carries. So, we are going to vote on Article 3 with no changes. Would you like me to read the motion again? Who read the motion originally? You? Planning board, can we have? It's going to just approve the bylaw as written. Is a yes vote. A no vote turns it down. Does everybody understand that? All those in favor of the bylaw, please raise your cards. All those opposed? We're going to have to do it one more time, please. No, I can do it this way. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed? I got to count. Folks, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to count. Okay, folks, all those opposed, stand up to be counted again, please. Folks, there's been, the tally is done. We've added things up here and done some math up here. 498 in favor, 236 noes. It is passed by two-thirds majority. So now,
Point of information.
Go ahead, Mr. Canacchioli. Louis. And what he's going to ask about reconsider.
Mr. Moderator, Lou Carnicchioli, 18 Blueberry Lane. What was the total number of votes and what was the number required to reach two-thirds?
734 total votes.
734 total votes.
498 in favor.
What is 2/3? I'm not a math teacher. I was a social studies teacher.
249 were needed to be in opposition of it to make it go down.
Right.
13 votes different.
I would like to divide the House. I would like to divide the House. It's too close. It's too close to rely on counting.
Order!
I would like to divide the House.
We've already counted. We don't need to divide the House. Do you have a point of order? Or?
I have more of a comment, if I could. Peter Richards.
We really don't allow comments between articles.
Okay, could I make a motion that we put this to a ballot? Because I watched the counting go on. No. Hey, I don't care one way or the other which way this goes. All I want is fairness. And what I saw in the counting was not fair. How I saw it counted was not fair. I watch people on both sides get counted more than once. 13 votes. I think we need to do this the right way. We need to actually get it on paper, let people vote for it the right way. That's it. Hey, it's all about doing the right thing, isn't it? Isn't this about doing the right thing?
So, folks, we want to do this as right as we possibly can. If there is a motion to reconsider, just hear me out for 1 second. If a motion to reconsider is taken, and that's a 2/3 to reconsider, in turn, if it passed, we can go back and have a vote, and at that time, if someone chooses to, the gentleman that just came up here and made a comment, chooses to have a paper ballot, a motion can be made, similar to the one that was earlier, to do a paper ballot, and if that passed, we can physically do that. That's the... Please keep your comments to yourself. If there is no motion to reconsider, then we don't have to go any farther. Come up to the mic if you want to make a... Well, if it's a motion to reconsider, no comments at this time.
People have gone home.
John Medeiros, 1 Pleasantdale Road, Rutland, Mass. I make a motion to reconsider.
I second. Point of order, Mr.
Yeah, he's got to be in the favorable side. All right, so that motion has been made and seconded, correct? Yes. Did someone second that motion? Yep. Okay, now, unless you're going to talk about that motion.
It's a point of order about the making of the motion.
Okay.
Owen Scholes, 20 Bigelow Road. A motion to reconsider, I believe, has to be made by someone who voted in the affirmative. Can you demonstrate that you voted in the affirmative?
Where's the gentleman? That is only a recommendation. That is not required by law per council. In turn, sir, were you on the favorable side? Does anybody that was on the favorable side choose to reconsider? You're on the favorable side. You choose to have the motion. Name and address, please. Does that motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. This is a majority vote, and only a majority vote to reconsider. All those in favor of reconsidering, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Motion is defeated. Folks, we're going to move on to Article 4. The seat. Well, folks, you realize you don't have to leave. You could stay. We'll take a brief moment while we have... We'll take a motion to recess briefly. All those in favor of taking our brief recess? All those opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as may be necessary to defray the expenses of the Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto. Maybe it's the chairman of the Board of the Finance who's in the bathroom, so we'll have to wait a second. Karen, read it, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $549,916 to defray the expenses of the Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of Finance.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorable.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Same sign, those opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as may be necessary to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District minimum local contribution for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto. Motion, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,226,608 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District minimum local contribution for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as be necessary to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District debt services assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $587,031.00 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District debt service assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st.
Does this motion receive support? Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of Finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Can you explain the number that's written on the article versus your motion is different, Mr. Richard? Mr. Mike.
Mr. Moderator, the amount that was written in the read in the motion, $587,031, is the correct amount. The handout that was given had a scrivener's error in it. That is not the legal document. Anyway, we are looking for $587,031. Thank you.
Did you hear that? What he read is right. It was an error in what was written out.
Mr. Moderator?
If you got to come up to the mic, ma'am. You're asking too many questions that I can handle from there, please. Huh?
It just says there's a reduction from last year. Is that amount correct?
Mr. Moderator, if I may? To answer the question that's been asked, the scrivener's error does not impact what it says there was a reduction. There was a reduction in this year's debt service assessment of $23,178.
Is there any other discussion on this motion? Is there any other discussion on this motion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as be necessary to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District Transportation Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action thereto.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,090,756.00 to defray the expense of the Wachusett Regional School District Transportation Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019.
Does this motion receive support? Second. Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
Finance Committee recommends favorable to this article. Finance Committee recommends favorable to this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 8, to see if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as may be necessary to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District Operation Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money, therefore, to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,164,910.00 to defray the expenses of the Wachusett Regional School District Operations Assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably.
Is there any discussion on this article?
Harry Seckman, 13 Beechwood Drive. We've had various articles now putting together little pieces of the Wachusett budget. Can someone, Mr. Moderator, tell me what the total number of dollars that we funded Wachusett with so far from all these articles?
You have a question?
Mr. Moderator, if I may I ask a clarification? Just so far, or the total number?
You want the total number or
I'm
so far?
Talking about these articles.
Yes.
Yes. Total number of these articles.
Their assessment too.
Yes. The total assessment with all of the articles together for the Wachusett Regional School District would be $12,519,305.
Thank you.
Robin Farrington, 21 Cheryl Land Drive. Just a point of clarification. We were wondering if we could please have that number for the operations assessment reread, because I think a couple of the numbers may have accidentally been switched around when it was spoken.
Tommy, could you restate the number? A little bit louder, please. In the motion.
$3,164,910 even.
$3,614,910 on my sheet.
Which one? I'm sorry. My apologies. Mr. Moderator, what was the question? My apologies.
The numbers are different. The number that she has in front of her is different than what the motion was. Can you explain why?
Number 8.
Can we turn the fans down a tad to make it easier for people to be heard?
Yeah.
I didn't say off, just a tad.
Mr. Moderator, the amount...
Leave them on.
The amount that I have on all of the backup information here for Article 8 is $3,164,910.00.
Okay, on the warrant, it says something different. It's saying $3,614,910.
Motion takes precedence, always.
Okay.
So it's typically a typo error.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification for the crowd.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise such sum of money as be necessary to defray the expenses of the municipal department for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that...
Louder.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,065,650.97 to defray the expenses of the municipal departments for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 for such purposes and in the amount set forth in the fiscal year 2020 budget handout.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
The Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? It's on, but just talk real loud, please.
Hello. Okay. Mike Sullivan, Crawford Road. I'd like to amend that article to say raise and appropriate an additional $550 to line item 001-182 and change the totals to reflect this.
That's an amendment, correct? And does your motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment that Mr. Sullivan just made? Could just one half a second, could you just explain why? Sure. Just briefly.
Mr. Moderator, for 20 years, our budget has been $200 for the RDIC. And this year we hired a secretary, so the additional $750 is what we anticipate her cost to be for the entire year. So what I'm asking to do is add $550 to offset that, which is what I submitted originally.
Is there any other discussion on the motion that we're only speaking about his
Yes.
$550?
Yes, that's correct. Can you clarify what the IDIC is?
State your name and address, please.
My name is Catherine Quinlivan, 32 Brunel Drive.
33 Brunel Drive.
The RDIC is the Rutland Development Industrial Commission, and our main function right now has been the development in the work at the Rutland Heights Hospital, but it also entails other municipal properties as required.
Is there any other discussion on his amendment? Is there any other discussion on his amendment?
Karen Narwhal, 149 Palmagussit Road. I would like to ask Mr. Sullivan why this wasn't brought to the Finance Committee in a timely fashion. We've been meeting every single week since February.
Well, I did submit this number to the Finance Committee when I was requested for a budget.
You didn't submit this to the Finance Committee, you submitted it to the Town Administrator?
Perhaps.
I guess my question still remains as to why the RDIC did not come to the Finance Committee and request that money to be added to their budget.
Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion on the amendment to increase by $550? We're going to vote only on the $550 as an amendment. All those in favor of increasing by $550, please signify by saying, raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we're going back to the original motion with the $550 added in there. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion on the original motion? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, I need to make a motion to reconsider Article 8 with a different number. We have updated information.
So she is requested to have a reconsider vote because there was an error on Article 8. Do I need a motion?
That was the motion.
So does Sheila's motion receive support? A motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on allowing Sheila to reconsider that Article 8?
I know, Joe. Here we go.
In order to make Joe Becker, 18 Crestview Drive, in order to make an informed decision on this, I'd like to know what the error was, please.
What was the error?
Mr. Moderator, this one is on me. I had the wrong paper in front of me. The correct number was the 3.6.
Did you hear that, Mr. Becker? Mr. Ross is shaking his no. He had the wrong paper in front of him. The number that he stated was incorrect. He was looking at the wrong piece of paper. The correct number is what the young lady said over here? Yep. The correct number is what this young lady over here said that was questioned. More or less. So all we're discussing right now is to reconsider Sheila's.
My question is, that's a $500,000 difference. Which number was used when we balanced the budget?
The higher number was used to balance the budget. The 3.6 million was used to balance the budget.
Is there any other discussion on reconsidering to look at Article 8 again? Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of reconsidering Article 8, please raise your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to reconsider. I would entertain a motion to...
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend Article 8 to change the amount. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,614,910.
Does that motion receive support?
$3,614,910. Oh my God.
Second. Does that motion receive support?
Second.
Do I ask for the finance?
14910.
You heard the motion with the correction. Is there any discussion on that motion? Is there any discussion on that motion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, folks. We're moving on to, you done 9? Article number 10, to see if the town will vote to raise such sums of money as be necessary to defray the expenses of debt services for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and to determine whether the town will appropriate money therefore to be provided by taxation or by appropriation from available funds or take any action in relation thereto. Tommy, they can't hear you. You got to get very close.
Is that working?
Appears to be. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,233,580.63 to defray the expenses of debt service for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article?
Harry Seckman, 13 Beechwood Drive. Was there any material change in our debt service over 18?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, and we do have our town treasurer here who does have that information available. If that is okay.
Where is he?
She's right over there.
Oh. Our town treasurer is going to come answer that.
I'm Rebecca Tuttle, Town Treasurer, Collector. Actually, there was a decrease in debt service by 48.41% for this year. Most of it was the one of the school debt, the large school debt came off.
My question may be asked by you.
Go ahead. Say whatever you say.
So he's looking for the actual dollar value.
Becky, you got to get closer to the mic. Nobody can hear you.
I sound really loud. Okay. So it was a 48% decrease from the previous year in debt service. I'm trying to think if that's the right number. I think it is. Yeah, so it's $1,157,440.80 was the reduction. That is netted against MSBA reimbursement that we received for $864,461. So both the receipt of that MSBA money that comes in as a reimbursement and this debt of $1.1 million is coming off. The net reduction to our debt with that receipt coming out is $292,000.
Yes, Lou Carnicoli, 18 Blueberry Lane, Rutland. Two-part question. Number one, on our total debt for buildings, et cetera, how much do we still owe?
I'd say it's about $12 million still.
Thank you. Part two of my question. This is to the Board of Selectmen. Have you thought about or have you tried to enter into negotiations with our debt holders to see if you can reduce the rate or percentage of what we're paying? We've been a good people. We've made our payments on time. We're closing in on some of the buildings to end this. So how often have you been out, or when was the last time this board went out to see if you can reduce the percentage of our debt? Thank you. Are you?
Yep.
The Board of Selectmen are the leaders. You're still the leaders. You're still the leaders, the Board of Selectmen.
We do have a financial advisor through Unibank services that we contact regularly and is looking at our debt every single year to see what we can renegotiate or refinance. We did refinance in 2015. We ended up saving it refinanced 5 different pieces of debt that went out another 20 years. We ended up saving about $385,000 over the life of those loans to refinance them. We are constantly looking at the debt that's out there to see if we can refinance and get lower interest rates, but we're kind of in a holding pattern right now for the extent of the time that we need to borrow for.
Could I just have a follow-up, just a quick follow-up? You said we're out there looking. Do we actually, if I may, through you, Mr. Chairman, ask the, okay. You say we're out there looking. Are we actually, though, talking to people besides just looking to see if we can reduce it on a yearly basis?
Yes.
Okay. But thank you very much. And thanks for your hard work. I appreciate that.
Lyndon Nichols, 5 Lizzie Lane. Full disclosure, I'm with USDA, which holds 4 of the notes, and they are not negotiable. You can refinance with no costs, but you cannot renegotiate the rate. So.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 11, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of GLC 44, Section 53E and a half to combine the Water Enterprise Fund and the Sewer Enterprise Fund into a new Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund and transfer any balances in such enterprise funds into a newly established combined fund or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and 1/2 for the purpose of creating a combined Sewer and Water Enterprise Fund effective July 1st, 2019, and further to authorize the Select Board to seek assistance from appropriate state officials, including the filing of a home rule petition to access the balances in such existing enterprise funds as soon as possible to pay outstanding City of Worcester bills.
Second.
Motion made and second. Is the recommendation of the Finance, please?
Finance Committee recommends favorable on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article?
Linda Willett, Glenwood Road. There is a state law stating that a municipality acting under Section 1A may make assessments upon owners of land abutting upon private or public way in which a common sewer has been laid only at the time of connection to the sewer. I'm stuck with a septic because the town has failed to provide me with sewer. We shouldn't be paying sewer. Septic systems are very expensive.
I don't understand the question.
Just to clarify, and this comes up often, the entire body needs to vote on every article, even when you are not using some of the services. In this case, we're talking about the Water and Sewer Enterprise Funds. This doesn't, although you vote on it as a town resident, this does not affect your taxes. We are talking about separated water and sewer enterprise funds. Those are paid for by the ratepayers only.
I have town water. You want to combine sewer with water, but you're not going to help pay for our septic pumping, repairs.
Right. This article is only regarding the public utilities. You're correct. The entire town is not on water or sewer. This article is only addressing the people who are on those public utilities.
I am on town water.
You are in town water?
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't have town sewer.
Gotcha.
But you want me to pay for a service that you have not provided.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, the substance behind this motion is simply to combine the accounts based off a recommendation by our consultant for the Department of Public Works regarding our sewer bill. Continuing forward, even if the accounts should be combined, water will still be billed at a separate rate, sewer will still be billed at a separate rate. If you are only on water, you will only receive a water bill. If you are only on sewer, you will only receive a sewer bill. All this does is change the accounting method that's taken after the bills are collected by the town. Thank you.
The rate won't go up.
This article is, Mr. Moderator, if I may, excuse me. This article actually does not involve the rates. The rates are set by the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. All this article does is change the accounting method of those accounts.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Thank you.
Judge Johnson, 14 Glenwood Road, Rutland. I worked for the town for 32 years, and I would like to know, why are we taking money from the water, which we have plenty of money in there, and putting it over to the sewer because the sewer bills weren't paid, so now you're going to have the water money paying the sewer bills. Why is that? It doesn't make sense. You're going to run the water down in a few months. Why is this being done?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, Director Buckley has worked on this extensively since he started here in the town of Rutland, and he also has the consultant who worked on the report that came up with this proposal.
There's no objections that Mr. Buckley, as Highway Superintendent, has the ability to speak where he's not a resident.
I'm going to be speak as plain.
You should face me, Mr. Buckley.
I'll speak as plainly as I can. Well, I wanted to address it. Yeah. The transportation and treatment costs to move wastewater out of Rutland were far exceeded what we had coming in. Basically, we can't pay the bills we have to pay to move the wastewater out of town and get it treated. We tried to look at some short-term rate increases, but they were excessive. You know, $300, $400 for 1 quarter for an average home for the last part of 19, and it just wasn't realistic. So the hope was that we could use some retained earnings in water to cover that bill and then raise rates accordingly. That is the long-term plan.
Thank you. I realize you're new, and nice to meet you.
Joe.
My point is, though, you're going to drain the water, and now you're going to raise the rates in the sewer and the water. It's a never-ending thing. You know, we got a lot of elderly people in town. And soon, it's going to be, water and sewer are going to be more than your taxes, and that's wrong. You need to get out there and straighten stuff out. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Joe Becker, 18 Crestview Drive. I actually think the first lady who had a question had a legitimate question. And I kind of want to back up a minute, and the answer that was provided is stating that this is an accounting mechanism, which I don't disagree with. This is an accounting mechanism. We're combining 2 enterprise funds. However, there's a reason this is being requested of the town, and I think that reason is what needs to be explained to the town. The fact of the matter is the Water Enterprise Fund has a significant balance in retained earnings. The Sewer Enterprise Fund does not. The bills the town has to pay, or the enterprise has to pay, exceed what the Sewer Enterprise has. This accounting change is going to allow the town, the enterprise funds, to take from what is now Water Enterprise retained earnings to pay the outstanding debt we have, or the outstanding bills we have on the sewer. So her question was very valid. While the bill and the rate structure going forward, maybe water pays for water and sewer pays for sewer, but the fact of the matter is, by combining this tonight, we're taking whatever the number is, and that could be provided. I think it's in the neighborhood of $300,000, $400,000, $433,000, $700,000. And what is the balance in water retained earnings right as of today?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, I believe I misheard that first. The water retained earnings currently have $700,000 in them. The sewer retained earnings have $20,000 in them.
And what is the outstanding bills for sewer?
$593,074.10.
So we're taking more than 2/3 of our water retained earnings to pay our sewer bills. This lady who is only a water user has an absolute legitimate question. Why is her rates, which she's been contributing since she's been a water user, and that has helped the balance of the water retained earnings, why are her rates going to pay for sewer? This all comes back to, why did we get here? How did we get here? And I get the fact that bills have increased in sewer. But if we go back to the numbers, the bills for sewer have been increasing since fiscal year 2017. We're talking about fiscal year 2020 here, folks. Why, over the last 3 years, have rates not been adjusted to keep pace with the bills coming into the sewer enterprise fund? Had they been adjusted accordingly over the years when they should have been, based on the bills coming in, we wouldn't be, I can guarantee you, we wouldn't be here tonight being asked to combine water and sewer enterprise accounts. So that brings to the next question: what are we doing to go forward to make sure this does not happen again? Because now we're going to combine water and sewer. If this passes, we're going to have one retained earnings. That could go into a deficit pretty quick too. So what are we going to do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Mr. Moderator, if I may. To answer the gentleman's question, to answer the gentleman's question, yes, combining the account would allow a portion of the water retained earnings, that's money that's already been collected, to go toward that sewer rate. I do want to explain the reason behind the thinking of that. Our consultant stated that should this bill be outstanding or the town be unable to pay it, the two options that would have been in place are a 250% increase on the rates for sewer users, or if that was not done, the state would come in and reduce the amount from the cherry sheet assistance that the town receives. Any remaining amount would be taken out of the town's free cash, and any amount remaining after that would be put as a surcharge on the property tax bills for every resident in town, not just those on water and sewer. So that is the reasoning behind that. Over the past couple of years, and again, if there's further questions on this, I'm sure Director Buckley can be able to assist. The bulk of our sewer retained earnings had to be put toward necessary improvements for lines that had failed, or construction or things of that nature, that we weren't able to save those up over the past couple of years. I can tell you that in 2015, the total bill for the city of Worcester for the transportation and treatment costs, which are these outstanding bills, for all 4 quarters was $470,939.06. The current bill, which only includes quarters 1, 2, and 3, and which the town has not yet received its 4th quarter bill, is $593,074.10. So that delta was what led us to this option. May I just ask, I just want to make sure I answered all of the gentleman's questions. Is that?
No, can I follow up? So I kind of knew the reasons why, but the first question I asked was, this trend started in fiscal year 2017. So the question was, in 2017, if I'm looking at the numbers, and this was the numbers provided on the report from the Abraham Group, which is the report that the town paid to have done, in fiscal year 2017, there was a deficit in the sewer enterprise of $142,648. In fiscal year 2018, there was a deficit of $143,683. So the question was, why in FY17, when a significant deficit had started forming at that time, were the rates not adjusted to pay for those bills?
So, as you can see, we are in a very difficult position, and I do want to speak to Mr. Becker's concerns. This did happen fairly quickly. We were in a pretty good position back in 15, 16. While he was still on the board, we did raise rates once. The year after that,
We raised them twice.
Excuse me. We raised rates just before you left. The year after he left, our rates in 16 were still okay. He is correct. At the end of 17, the final bill was very high. At that time, in March of 2018, our former DPW superintendent commissioned a study to be done for water and sewer rates. That study was probably delayed more than we would have liked. And when Mr. Buckley came on, he fast-tracked it and made sure that it got to us as soon as we could. However, it was not soon enough. The bills that we have seen, and we certainly can argue about whether or not we should have been raising rates every year. And in fact, we did. We had a discussion about our pattern of raising rates every 3 years and whether that needed to be made more extreme and raise them every year. There was discussion of waiting for the rate study in order to do that. In the interim, and I can't blame weather on everything, but I do, and again, Mr. Buckley can speak to this a lot more eloquently than me, weather did play a factor. We have had an extreme amount of rain, both this past fall, precipitation into the winter, precipitation this spring. We are not alone in this problem. We are seeing rates going up in West Boylston and Holden as well. However, their retained earnings were able to absorb these extra large bills that were unanticipated. In our case, and hindsight 2020, we had been using sewer retained earnings to do capital projects and repairs, and there were many of them. And the amount of money in retained earnings was dropping, and it started to drop very quickly. Water has been very stable, and so water over the past 9 years was actually that retained earnings were being used and saved in anticipation of very large water projects that are actually coming up. We're here now with a whole series of not good options in front of us, and this is possibly, if you decide it, the best of all the bad ones. If the body does not choose to go and take this first step, the water sewer commissioners aren't going to have much choice other than to raise rates significantly, immediately, and send a special bill out. We are talking 220% increases. I want to circle back to Joe's point about the woman who started, and I apologize, I don't remember your name, regarding water-only users. We have 1,600 sewer users. There are 100 people, and then out of that, 1,500 of them are water. For those people, you are utility users, water and sewer. In your case, using one side of the utility bill savings to pay for another, it's not ideal, but the argument at least can be made. For those 100 people, it's not a good answer. And to be fully transparent and to sit there and say that there's a water user that's been paying 9 years worth of bills, and within those bills, there have been retained earnings saved within the account in anticipation of doing water-specific projects, it's not good. And so the discussion that the water commissioners have to have is in talking about rate increases, which there will be whether we do this or not. It's just a question of how extreme they will be. In doing rate increases, do we work in an increase that will offset what we have taken from the water users and replenish this fund? It's a discussion that we absolutely have to have. Those meetings will be on camera. They will be public. Anyone can attend. I don't blame Joe for any of his questions tonight. I wish I had better answers. I wish the weather had been different. I wish we had done maybe a couple of things differently in the past 18 months. We're here tonight, and I don't know if that answers everything, Joe.
Just one last comment. It's not a question, and it goes back to something Sheila said early in her response. A study should not be necessary to determine whether rates need to be changed. We changed rates twice when I was on the board with you. Neither one of those times was a study necessary to determine what the rates were. It's a simple calculation. Do we have enough money coming in to pay the bills going out? And if no, adjust the rates accordingly. It's that easy.
Robert Liptak, 319 Main Street. I'm a water-only user for the last 30-some years. Now, I see we have a water account. All water users with sewer or not sewer have contributed to this account. Water is a very valuable resource, as everyone knows. We need that fund to protect our only resource, the Muscatine Pond. And I don't think it's fair that everyone's contributed to this water resource fund for water purposes. It shouldn't save the day. I don't care how you got into trouble. You're not asking the fire department, the police department, or any other department to take money from their funds to pay for this. You shouldn't be asking money from the water resource just because, I mean, they go down the same drain. I'm sorry, but you know, it's water, it's valuable. You could pay off the new water tower, or you can take care of unanticipated problems. The water is very valuable, so I think it's wrong to steal from this fund, and you just have to take it on the chin and figure out some other way. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Senecles, 64 Glen Road. Mr. Moderator, I have a question, and then I'd just like to hear the response, and so don't throw me off the mic, please. To the Select Board, with you taking this money out of the water account, is there any plan to replace that money?
Yes. I personally had a conversation with our attorney, Ms. Goldberg, and we had a very specific discussion to Mr. Liptak's point as well, that, again, as not good as this is to borrow the money from water, we need to work into the sewer rates a portion that will replenish what we took, in addition to, most likely, borrowing for repairs. So to get back to Joe's discussion about a study, he's right. People can go ahead and just kind of raise rates based on just a bill. Our issue is it's not just about the bill for treatment and transportation. We have I&I projects that need to continue. We have infrastructure issues that need to continue. We had a more complicated scenario in front of us, which was why I think our DPW superintendent commissioned the study. He really wanted to see this done so that we could get a broader picture. We're not professionals. We need the professionals.
With all due respect, is there a plan in place already, or are you just suggesting that there may be one? You're not specific. Is there a plan in place, yes or no?
No, there is.
There is not.
We needed to get the decision of the town meeting tonight to set our next steps as water sewer commissioners.
Well, shouldn't that be a part of the whole plan, Select Board?
Yes.
You're coming here asking for money, but you're not going to tell us how you're going to pay it back. I mean, think about this for a minute. You want to take $500,000 from one account to people like me who just pay water. I have a private septic system. And you're not telling us how you're going to pay us back. You know, the whole thing about this is it's very disappointing to see a Select Board sit up here in the day of transparency. Mr. Becker has to beat the information out of you. You leave this brand new town manager up here swinging in the wind on a rope while you just sit there and hope everybody just plays dumb and doesn't ask the right questions. And Mr. Becker had to beat it out of you. It was all rhetorical. We all knew the situation here. And there's no plan in place to deal with this. Everything's reactionary, no proactive. This is terrible management by our Select Board. We need to hold them accountable for the mistakes they make and not just keep shuffling money around to cover the tracks. Folks, please vote no.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, just to clarify, Director Buckley is currently working with our consultant on a 5-year plan to make sure that we are not in this situation again in the future. This would determine whether that plan could go into place or not. If it didn't, a new plan would have to be put in place. But Director Buckley has worked extensively with our consultant to draft a 5-year plan that will be presented at a future town meeting. Thank you.
Pat Schmoll, 17 Arlene Drive. I'm not in the Water and Sewer District. Normally, I don't vote on these issues, but I just want to understand the impact of a no vote to the taxpayers that are not on water and sewer. Because it looks like you're going to be taking money out of free cash, and it could impact the budget, and if we have to take $500,000 out of the budget, it'll probably impact police, fire, DPW.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, to answer his question, to give you the general overall answer, it's unclear what could happen because there are certain avenues that could take place. Should the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners not drastically and exponentially increase the rates, then the Department of Revenue would step in.
they would take out of this coming fiscal year's cherry sheet assessments, that's all state aid that the town receives, that amount, which is 39, which I don't want to give an incorrect number, but is not close to that 500,000. Anything remaining, when free cash is certified next fall, so this current fiscal year's free cash that'll get certified in the fall, anything remaining will come out of that. If there is then anything remaining out of taking everything out of state aid and taking everything out of our free cash in the fall, there'll be a surcharge placed on all resident property tax bills because it's viewed by the state as a bill that the town entire owes, not just those on water and sewer. So even those who are on just well and septic would then get that surcharge on their tax bill issued by the Department of Revenue at the state level. If this fails, as one of the options.
Mike Sullivan, a water-only user. To Mr. Senecal's point, in regards to reimbursing the water account, can't an amendment to this article be added that specifically states that there will be a proviso to replenish that money into, in other words, we approve this with the understanding that that money will be replenished?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, after consulting with Town Council, even if an amendment were such made, it would be a direction from the town for the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners, not a mandate. So the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners actually wouldn't be held to that. It would just be a suggestion in practice, other than the fact that it's been publicly discussed and the town has voted on it.
Well, is there a way to make it a mandate?
Mr. Moderator, unfortunately, no, because that under state law falls under the purview of the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners, not under the purview of the town meeting.
Well, I certainly think the suggestion would not hurt. I mean, it would certainly put everybody on notice that this is what's expected.
I think Mike, the answer to that question is with this move, the Water and Sewer Commissioners want to combine those two accounts, and it's one account. When it's done, all the fees are going to go into one account. They're going to pay. They got to pay the bills, and then anything that's reserved is in one account.
Yeah, no, I'm clear on that, but what is wrong to me is we're paying Peter to pay Paul, and you're asking Peter to subsidize Paul because whatever the reason is that it wasn't taken care of. Why should me, the water user who doesn't have sewer, subsidize the problem of the sewer users? And trust me, I mean no disrespect to the sewer users. It's just not right. I mean, it's not right. Yeah, it's un-American. You're right. You're absolutely right. You're taking the money from one place. Peter becomes Paul. Yeah, Peter becomes Paul.
Mitchell City, 4 Brindle Drive. To this gentleman's point, when we asked if we had a plan to prevent this from happening again, I think blaming weather and things like that is a poor excuse. I mean, paying your bills is the most basic tenet of effective government. And if we can't do that, and we're taxing others to pay for other services they're not using, that's without representation, and that's really not fair to the water users. And I just think that that's unacceptable. So to have to vote on this, to be able to even put together a plan to pay our bills is a little, quite frankly.
Michelle Van Riet, 230 Charnock Hill Road. I would disagree a little bit that this was a secret in terms of how the water sewer thing was being played out, because the same information that Joe brought to light tonight was also brought to light at the meeting at the Meet the Town Administrator and the new DPW person, and then there was a preview of the town meeting warrant articles, and I think it was even televised. So to say that it wasn't out there, I think is a misleading comment.
Just to clarify that, so this information was presented at the Meet the Town Administrator, DPW Director meet and greet. It was also previously presented at a Board of Selectmen's meeting. That meet and greet warrant information session was filmed with the intent to be put on television. However, due to audio quality and an issue with the microphone system, it was unable to be put because the audio couldn't be heard. So that is why it was actually not televised, but filmed with the intent to be.
Peter Pacer, 20 Highland Park Road. I move to close debate.
Move the question.
Yes, I move the question.
Does this motion receive support? Move the question. Stop debate. They receive support. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by raising your cards. And this is 2/3. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Declare a 2/3 vote. So now we're going to vote on this particular article. Does everybody understand how they're what the vote means? We're voting on combining. If you vote yes, you're going to combine the water and sewer. If you vote no, then you leave it the current way it is, and they have to figure out how to pay the bill, more or less. Correct? So everybody understands what they're voting on. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. This is only a majority vote. Let's put your cards down. We'll do this one more time. See how my eye is. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed. I declare it a majority in favor of. So, moving on to Article 12. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to operate the water department for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, or take any action in relation thereto. Doing that one.
And water. I'm the top man.
Sewer and water, both of them, sewer and water.
To defray the expenses of the water department. No, I know. Right. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise from the water and sewer department receipts the sum of $740,000, $111.49 to defray the expenses of the water department for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, with $214,215.75 for salaries and $525,895.74 for expenses, including $20,650 for indirect expenses.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. Recommendation from Finance, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably.
Is there any discussion on this article?
Do I have to say it again, Randy? Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Joe Becker, 18 Crestview Drive. So my question is, can you just clarify again the indirect charges, Mr. Rochelle?
Mike, indirect charges?
Oh, no, just the number. Not, yeah.
$20,650.00 in indirect expenses.
And was that part of the total that amounted to $740,111.49?
Mr. Moderator, the answer is yes.
It's a $525,895.
Then I think I would point, and frankly, this, going back to the other article, this is what concerns me. If you look at the Bureau of Accounts informational guideline on enterprise funds, it states in there approximately 3 times that, and I'll quote, "do not appropriate indirect costs in both the general fund operating budget and the enterprise fund budget." Indirect charges are those charges that are appropriated in the general fund, and I'll give you an example, healthcare. There's water workers, they're town employees, and they use healthcare. The healthcare expenses is appropriated in the town general fund, not the enterprise fund. We don't appropriate indirect charges a second time in the enterprise funds. We have to raise the money in the enterprise funds to reimburse the general fund, but we do not appropriate the money. So I would suggest that someone make a motion to adjust the number, the appropriation number, down by the indirect charge number and rephrase everything so that the total amount be raised from water enterprise revenues, but only the charges that are non-indirect be appropriated in the enterprise.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, the syntax of how this is worded could be misconstrued toward that. However, that $740,111.49 is the salaries and expenses. That expense amount is included, that those indirect expenses aren't being appropriated above and beyond the expenses. Those are included in the $525,895.74 that are listed for expenses under the article. They are not being appropriated twice.
Why are they called indirect charges then?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, this was actually a motion that I put together, and the reason I put it together like this is because, in fact, that amount of $525,895 included the indirects. We didn't want anyone to be under the misapprehension that they were being raised in the general fund. We understand that they're only being appropriated once.
You lost me. I'm sorry, I need to understand this. So indirect charges, we both agree that there's indirect charges in the water fund, correct?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, the funding for this is not in the budget article. This is a funding article. We're just pointing out that of that amount for expenses, there is money being raised for the indirects.
Can the motion be read again, please?
I move that the town vote to raise from the Water Sewer Department receipts the sum of $740,111.49 to defray the expenses of the Water Department for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, with $214,215.75 for salaries and $525,895.74 for expenses, including $20,650 for indirect expenses.
Mr. Moderator, we could certainly add as appropriated in the general fund, or as appropriated under the budget article. I can't remember what number it was.
That would make more sense, but I guess I have a concern now that we haven't appropriated any money either in that motion. We haven't appropriated money for salaries, and we haven't appropriated money for the expenses outside of indirect. The Bureau of Accounts has a recommendation of how these articles should be motioned. So they should say that the following sums be appropriated to operate the Water Enterprise Fund. Nothing's been appropriated based on that motion. We've raised money. We haven't appropriated anything. And I agree, we wouldn't want to appropriate indirect charges, but we have to appropriate the rest of it.
Mr. Moderator, the language to defray the expenses of the Water Department is the appropriation. That's the appropriation portion.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there?
I just want to answer Joe. We have done these differently in the past, but this is the wording that was given to us to use for this article.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to see if the town, Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money to operate the sewer department for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise from the water sewer department receipts the sum of $1,447,717.57 to defray the expenses of the sewer department for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, with $42,867.35 for salaries and $1,404,850.22 for expenses, including $20,650 for indirect expenses.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 14, to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money for the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund to fund the PEG Access and Cable Related Operations for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and further that at the close of the fiscal year to provide that all unspent funds shall be closed back to the PEG Access and Cable Related Funds or take any action in relation thereto.
I move that the town appropriate the sum of $65,000 from the PEG Access and Cable Fund to fund PEG Access and Cable related operations for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, and to authorize the Cable Advisory Committee to expend such appropriation and to revert all unspent funds at the close of such fiscal year back to the PEG Access and Cable related fund.
Does this motion receive support?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 15, to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 for the capital equipment, building, facilities, and other projects, and authorize the selectmen to take by eminent domain purchase or otherwise acquire by any fee, easement, or interest in land necessary therefore, determine whether the funding shall be provided by the tax levy by transfer from available funds by borrowing or by any combination of these methods, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to pay for, accept, and expend any federal or state grant funds or private donations that may be available for such capital improvement, and take any such other actions as may be necessary to influence the vote taken hereunder or take any action there in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve the capital items listed under Article 15 in the 2019 Annual Town Meeting Warrant Information Packet, with action on the first two items to constitute a recommendation only, and further, to approve the acquisition and equipment of a brush truck for the fire department and authorize the Board of Selectmen to the extent necessary to apply for, accept, and expend any grant funds or donations that may be made available for such purposes.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article?
Nolan Ware Road. Oops. Didn't mean to do that, sorry. I just have a question concerning the language and what the reason why we would want to grant the selectmen with the authorization for eminent domain
when it comes to a capital purchase. From what I understand, the state, but that's an awful lot of power, in my opinion, to be granting to our Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator, the motion is the only thing that's before town meeting, and sorry. Mr. Moderator, the motion is what's before town meeting, and the motion is to approve the first two items in Article 15 and the town meeting information packet as a recommendation only, and with respect to the brush truck, to authorize its acquisition and the use of grant funds for that purchase.
To summarize what she said, I don't think what I read versus what the motion is, the motion doesn't state eminent domain.
Okay, so we're just voting on the motion. So basically, the article language itself means nothing.
Mr. Moderator, the warrant article has to be broad enough to cover any possible action that might be need to be taken by town meeting. So for example, if one of the capital projects was to acquire a piece of land, the language that we had drafted for the article would be used for that purpose.
And that would require town meeting vote, or are we granting the Board of Selectmen the authority to just eminent domain on somebody's land?
Mr. Moderator, it absolutely would require a vote of the Board of Selectmen, which is why it was in there, so that if the town was going to propose a project that would require that, and typically eminent domain is used more to address issues with respect to the title, so a cloud on title because of an improper transfer of authority over time, than to do what we kind of think of more typically as someone taking the town's land without any permission. So that is not before the town tonight. In fact, everything that's being voted here is essentially just an endorsement of the three choices or the three projects that were ultimately chosen to be recommended. The funding for the first two are going to be in later articles.
Thank you.
Joe Becker, 18 Crestview Drive, speaking as a member of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. The Capital Improvement Planning Committee recommended the Fire Squad 1 replacement, which is Article 15, as well as the articles to follow in Articles 16 and 17. I just wanted to share that information with the body to let them know it did go through the screening process of CIPC and did come forward as a recommendation.
Is there any other discussion on Article 15? Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our, oh shoot, that was
majority.
Says 2/3 on my piece of paper.
It's a majority because of the motion.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought it had to be 2/3, but it's only majority. So, moving on to Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of, she just told me no. The sum of $148,266 to purchase the items and services for the Department of Public Works, including all incidental and related expenses provided. However, that the vote taken hereunder shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters of the town in a Proposition 2.5 so-called capital expenditure exclusion question in accordance with the provisions of MGL C 59, Section 21C, I, half, and M, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the total sum of $148,266 to purchase and equip certain items for the Department of Public Works for the purposes and in the amount set forth in the 2019 Annual Town Meeting Warrant Information Packet, including all incidental and related expenses, provided, however, that the vote taken hereunder shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters of the town of a Proposition 2.5 so-called capital expenditure exclusion question in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 59, Section 21C, I and a half, and M.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article?
149 Palmagussit Road. I'm curious, this motion's for 148-266, but the information packet has 114. I'm confused. Somebody help me understand.
The information packet indicates that the backhoe is 114,450. The grand total, after all of the other smaller items, is 148,266.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article?
Catherine Magnuson. I live at 14 Sunnyside Ave. 148,266 is that supposed to be the total of all of this whole column? Because that doesn't add up. I mean, it's $114,000 alone for the backhoe. I think it came to like 100. Where's the accountant guy? Do I got it wrong?
Someone's adding it right now for you.
That's like $160-something thousand.
Mr. Moderator, the cost of all of those items listed is indeed $148,266.
Thanks for making us check, though.
But I guess I have to get another calculator. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Scott Howard, 22 Glenwood Road. The backhoe that's on the back of this, is this the backhoe that we're looking to buy?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, all of the pictures on the back of this green sheet, save for the hydraulic thumb because there was no picture, is the exact make and model from the developer's website.
With that said, this tilt bucket is way too big for that.
Correct. The tilt bucket was it printed too dark, because that is also one that is not the same. My apologies for not mentioning that earlier in speaking correctly.
So did we look at other options besides a John Deere 410J?
We did.
And what were those options?
Director Buckley, would you like to answer that?
I can hear you.
Nope.
We did not look at other options because we made a recommendation to pitch. We're buying the John Deere backhoe off the state contract, and it's spec for John Deere, and that's why we're sticking with what we have.
Okay.
It's not a bid. It's not like it doesn't go out for bid. The state has put together a series of places for municipalities to buy equipment.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 17, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $18,300 for the available water and sewer fund for the purpose of funding a algae boom study for Muskapog Pond as recommended by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $18,300 from Water Department retained earnings for the purpose of funding an algae bloom study for Muskapog Pond as recommended by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee.
Does this motion receive support? Second. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
The Finance Committee recommends favorably for this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to authorize. I was trying to get down under that hour of that tape there. I flipped the wrong side. I do apologize. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend any grants or donations from the state or federal government or private agencies, individuals, or institutions, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve the Article 18 as printed in the warrant.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into contract for goods and services with duration in the excess of 3 years under the provisions of GLC 30B, Section 12B, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 19 as printed in the warrant.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 20, to see if the town will vote to appropriate all funds which become available from the fiscal year 2020 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Highway, Chapter 90, bond issue proceeds by the use by the DPW for the repairs and maintenance of town roads in conformance with the Massachusetts general law, and further that the town will vote to raise and appropriate by borrowing and authorize the town treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to issue bonds or notes to the town, therefore to anticipate of receipts of said state aid or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve Article 20 as printed in the warrant.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article?
Luke Carnicoli, 18 Blueberry Lane. Do we have any idea how much money we're going to get for Chapter 90?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, based on the House budget that was just passed, Rutland's current Chapter 90 money for the upcoming fiscal year will be $376,544.
And we're going to put every dime of that into road repair, correct?
For the purposes of Chapter 90, yeah.
We're going to put every dime into road repair, correct?
Yeah, it's the,
Thank you.
Yeah, which is the
Thank
purpose
you.
is consistent with Chapter 90, yes.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 21, to see if the town will vote to pursue to the provisions of GL Section 44, no, C44, Section 53E and a half, as most recently amended, to establish the fiscal year 2020 spending limits for the revolving funds listed in Section 6 of the bylaw of the same name, and all as set forth below, with such that word there, expenditure limits to be applicable for each fiscal year until such time as town meeting vote prior of July 1 in any year to the change the same of the ensuing fiscal year. Provide, however, that the request of the entity authorized to expand such funds, the Board of Selectmen, with the approval of the Finance Committee, may increase such limits for the fiscal year only, all as set forth below. You have a chart directly in front of you. I will not read it or take any actions in there relate to.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve Article 21 as printed in the warrant.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorable on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Article 22, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court of Special Legislation in the form set forth below, provided, however, that the general court shall authorize to make changes of form only unless approved by the Board of Selectmen, or further, the Board of Selectmen shall be authorized to approve changes that are not consistent with the public purpose of this petition or take any action in relation thereto. I will not read the rest of it.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve Article 22 as printed in the warrant.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
Finance Committee recommends favorably.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Moving on to Article 23, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to make the technical corrections to bring in ordinance with the official zoning map, and for the purposes to delete texting referring to the industrial district and to the multifamily residential district as on file with the town clerk, and to authorize the town clerk to assign appropriate numbering to this bylaw in accordance with the compliance with the numbering format of the zoning bylaw, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve Article 23 as printed in the warrant.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Recommendation of the Planning Board.
Planning Board recommends favorably on the article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? This is a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously and passes 2/3. Moving on to Article 24, to see if the town will vote to amend the town bylaws by adding the new bylaw entitled Bylaw Committee as filed with the town clerk, and to authorize the town clerk to assign appropriating numbers to this bylaw in order that they will be in compliance with the numbering format of the bylaw, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move to amend the general bylaws of the town by inserting a new bylaw entitled Bylaw Committee as set forth in the handout provided.
Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorably in this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article?
Go ahead. I will. Tim Narwhal, 149 Palmagussit. I guess I need to understand more about this article. Is that forming a committee, or is that just putting language into our general bylaws? Or is it giving the ability to form a committee?
Mr. Moderator, if I may, over the past year, when Administrator Reed was still the interim administrator here, the selectmen voted to create an ad hoc bylaw committee. It just codifies that committee and makes it an official town committee, rather than an ad hoc just under the selectmen.
Correct. So if I may follow up to the moderator.
Once.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So the ad hoc committee is charged with a duty. Now we're forming a committee that actually is going to take over the bylaws, as opposed to the bylaw subcommittee that used to do that, correct?
No, Mr. Moderator, if I may, all zoning-related bylaws will still stay under the Planning Board Bylaw Subcommittee.
Again,
This is only all non-zoning related bylaws would be reviewed, but their main task is to codify and modernize the existing town bylaws. Yeah, the town's general bylaws are listed in the bylaw itself, and all of the members of the current ad hoc committee would have to reapply for appointment with the Board of Selectmen.
So through the town moderator, so they're going to be an appointed, not an elected, correct?
Correct.
Is there any other discussion on this article? Is there any other discussion on this article?
Chris Senical, 64 Glen Road. Is this a paid committee or is it volunteer?
Mr. Moderator, this is not a paid committee.
Would you like to ask a second question at this time, Mr. Senical? Is there any other discussion at this time? Is there any other discussion at this time? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Article 25. The Article 25 is been presented by the Rutland Ag Commission, and just to be completely transparent, I am a member of the Rutland Ag Commission. I don't believe there to be any conflict. If there's no objection, I will continue to conduct the meeting. No objection. Thank you. To see if the town will vote to pursue to the GLC 40 Section 5B to establish a new stabilization fund to known as the Open Space Preservation Stabilization Fund to be used for the acquisition of undeveloped or lightly developed properties within the town of Rutland that contain the majority of forest, agricultural, or passive recreation land to be maintained as open space for the use of citizens of Rutland and for the maintenance and repair of existing structures and facilities on property acquired under the article or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve Article 25 as printed in the warrant.
Does this motion receive support? Motion made and seconded. Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? You have a few other people moving, Chris, but it doesn't.
Rachel Dolan, Ware Road. So I understand it, we already have a conservation fund that I'd like to know, does anybody tell me what the balance in that fund is?
He's looking.
Mr. Moderator, our town accountant is here, Dan Haynes. He has that information to provide.
Dan, can you answer that?
Okay, thank you. And as a
$10,000.78.
follow-up, I understand that conservation fund is for agriculture, open space, recreation, could be for any of those purposes, acquire land, but it requires town meeting vote because it's tax dollar money that goes into it. Does that fund, that conservation fund, also accept donations?
Mr. Moderator, any person can make a donation for a conservation-related purpose or acquisition of open space-related purpose. The conservation fund is funded by town meeting and by certain receipts from applications.
But what I understand is this new ag fund that we want to create is going to be a combination of taxpayer money that we vote to go into the fund, but people can also make donations to it. Why is this fund legally not have to have a 501(c) like the Council of Aging has the Friends to donate to? And the other question to that is this fund we're voting on gives all the power to spend this money totally on the Board of Selectmen, which requires no town meeting vote. And whereas I am supportive of ag, I have a problem giving that power using taxpayer money without the voters being able to actually vote on it.
Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, if I may, I do want to point out that there is a statute, Chapter 44, Section 53A, that allows any board or committee that receives a donation to use that money for the purpose of the donation with the approval of the Board of Selectmen if it's town side related, or the school committee if it's school side related. That's in state law, and there's no vote that needs to be taken on that.
Mr. Moderator, Harry Sexton, 13 Beechwood Drive. If I understand, the answer to the question is if town money goes in there, and, quote, private money goes in there, it's still at the discretion of the town how they spend it? It doesn't have to go before the town for a vote?
We had this question earlier, Harry. It's come up before. It's a fair question. There are greater powers to the Agricultural Commission because of changes in the legislature in 2016. It is our understanding moving forward, and this was asked before we placed it, and it was on camera at a Board of Selectmen meeting, that a purchase of land, pulling money from this account, would go to town meeting for approval. And back to the funding of the account, although technically taxpayer dollars could be used and placed in it, that will also come to town meeting, as would every other budget article, similar to how we put money into stabilization, OPEB, et cetera.
Is there any plan at this point for the next year, 2 or 3 years, to look at funding it from the town's perspective?
I think, and I can't speak for the entire board, but depending on the status of free cash in the fall, it would certainly come up.
Okay, thank you.
Lou Carnicoli. Is this being repetitive? Doesn't the state already provide this service? A purchase of land that's used as agriculture or whatever, so that the state buys it, pays off the citizen who owns the land? Isn't this kind of repetitious? Why don't we just, if these people are interested in giving their land over to this use, why don't we just push them in the direction of the state? It's state-funded money and not our town money.
So I can give, hopefully, an example of this. Certainly, we have properties in town that are under agricultural preservation restrictions, APR. We also have properties that receive tax abatements because they are under 61A. That means that were they to sell those properties for a non-agricultural use, the town has the right of first refusal to purchase them.
Yes.
Giving an example of the farm that was across from Naquag School is actually a perfect example of funding this account. The town, in looking at the 61A on that property and not having any money to purchase the property outright, gave its right of first refusal to a nonprofit who then it was decided to not move forward with the process. This would allow the town to get involved in some preservation of lands that other communities do. And I would encourage people here, I do tend to use them as sort of the gold standard, the town of Amherst. They do maintain both conservation funds and agricultural preservation funds. Those two groups work together cooperatively to figure out what a best practice plan is. In this case, if it were agricultural, our agricultural commission would then step in terms of long-term management and how that would happen.
Well, if I may, Mr. Moderator, I don't think we should compare ourselves to Amherst, number one. It's a very, very rich community. So, makes no sense to me. Secondly, if you're talking, giving an example of the Davis property, I understand the right of first refusal, because I think during the time I was selectman, that came before us a couple of times. This fund that you're talking about would have to have about $500,000 in it, or better. What you're telling us that we're on a tight budget. We passed the growth restriction law because of economic reasons, and you're looking to open up a fund that is going to be meaningless in purchasing types of land like the Davis farm. So again, my suggestion is, if we have people who are willing to do that, why don't we point them in the direction of the state? Wouldn't it have been wonderful if the state came in and purchased the Davis land? Then there wouldn't be those terrible buildings on it.
So the state did not express any interest in the Davis property. It certainly was pursued. There is an example in Princeton of a farm that was saved through a combination of public-private partnership. It was a long process. To Mr. Carnacchioli's point, I agree. We're creating this fund. We are seeding it with $500. They asked for $5,000 just to get it started, because we have to start somewhere. There have also been a couple of suggestions in terms of how to fund it. This would take legislative action, but for example, we have a lot of solar projects in town. Is it possible to take a percentage of every solar project, place it towards this preservation fund or a combination of the conservation funds? Again, it's not something we could do ourselves. It would take legislative action, but it's an option, and it's been discussed a little bit.
Chris Senical, 64 Glenwood Road. If we already have a conservation fund that can do this, what's the difference of why do we need another fund to do this? It seems like there's something we're not really being told. Does this fund give you more leniency? Is there more? I don't understand why the two funds. If we already have, like, what's preventing us from going out and getting these grants right now? Why do we need this fund to do that?
I don't know how many people are here from Agricultural Commission at this point, and I know Randy's not comfortable speaking. Looks like somebody's getting up. With the change to legislation in 2016, giving the Agricultural Commissions greater powers, and with the strength of the farm community here in Rutland, I think, and I'm not going to speak for them anymore, but I think the Agricultural Commission felt that this was a really good first step. I think it complements the Conservation Fund. I don't think it competes with it.
What are those greater powers you just mentioned in 2016 that were legislated in?
So I can't necessarily quote them right here. I'll find them right now. But there's essentially 2 pages of legislation that happened in 2016. It was well supported. It allows an Agricultural Commission to be able to essentially own, and it's still an agency under the town, properties and manage them for agricultural purposes.
I can't speak.
Mr. Jordan?
Oh. 50.
Name and address, please.
51 Muskapog Road. Wow, son of a gun. Enjoy while it lasts. So, a member of the Rutland Ag Commission, we brought it forth because our neighboring community, town of Holden, did something similar to it. And they had put a funding process in there greater than ours. Theirs was, I think there was a $50,000 start point, and then they were going to put in $50,000 thereafter as a thing to get toward that $500,000 number that they had talked about doing it. The difference between the conservation and the ag, I believe it has more power to have the ability to purchase land and create money available. I realize our $500 that we're asking for at the next article isn't going to provide it, but we have the ability to purchase land on our quicker turnaround in regards to producing the money. The town of Rutland has always wanted to purchase property, and sometimes, but it's creating the money or having the money to physically do that. And I believe that is different than the conservation has the ability to do. I think some of the other things is some of the grants that we have opportunities to, or the checkoff sheets that we have in the town. By having this open space fund, it gives us more opportunities to rank higher on some things, but also has the opportunity to receive some grants. By opening this fund, we have the ability to get money in from the state and other agencies easier to this fund than we do the conservation. I may be completely not 100% on all that, but that's the general gist of it, I believe. So I don't believe we're duplicating anything. We're both going down the same road together, but we're not duplicating everything together. I don't think it's a bad thing.
It just seems like we should have the details more done for the town meeting. I guess, I hope, I think, I hope.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? So before we move ahead, this requires a 2/3 majority vote. So I'm asking if you would make a motion that I can determine if it's a 2/3 vote. I would entertain a motion to that effect. Second? All those in favor of allowing me to determine the 2/3 vote? Down hands, you voted, that's positive. Yes?
The statute that's being accepted is 40 section 8L. It's in 40 section 8L.
Is that a change from what's here?
It is, yeah. That's my concern.
Our legal attorney has told us that it's actually general law, Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8L, instead of Section 5B.
Mr. Moderator, you're going to kill me, but it's a majority.
Oh, it's a oh,
Sorry.
it was two-thirds here. I stand corrected, it is a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor, raise your hands. What motion? The motion is to set up the agricultural fund as stated in Article 25.
No, it's to set up the agricultural fund. Mr. Moderator, if I may, the motion to amend was to change the reference to Chapter 40, Section 8L.
Well, that's an amendment.
Well, it can just be accepted. That's the correct
I
citation.
was assuming that was a typo, not an amendment. May I go ahead with that being a typo?
As long as the
It
main...
would certainly make the evening go faster. Thank you.
Fine.
So the motion then is the article?
No.
That is on the floor? No.
The motion on the floor, Mr. Moderator, would be to create the agricultural fund in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 8L. So now someone could say, so moved, or...
So moved. Point of information. I mean, I understand it's a minuscule thing, but it's a matter of principle. If you're supposed to vote to change a mistake,
Just change it.
you should vote.
Fine, change
If it
it.
takes us 2 or 3 minutes, it's worth it.
Fine, take a vote.
The principles from an open town meeting.
No.
I've seen principles violated. And I don't want to see it violated anymore.
Mr. Moderator, just take the vote.
Oh,
Take the vote on the amendment.
okay. Okay, Louis, I understand. That's fine. So we will vote on this being an amendment. The amendment is to change the wording, and the new wording is Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8L. All those in favor of amending the motion accordingly? Thank you. Those opposed? It is a vote, and I so declare it. Now we can vote the motion. So the motion ahead of you is to establish
Conservation Fund under 40, Chapter 8L.
an agricultural fund under Chapter 40, Section 8L. All those in favor of establishing that? Down hands. Those opposed? It is a vote, and I so declare it. Article 26 is now before you. Article 26, to see if the town will vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, to appropriate the sum of $500 to the Open Space Preservation Fund, and to transfer said sum from available funds or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $500 from free cash to the Open Space Preservation Fund.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. The Finance Committee, the recommendation, please.
We recommend favorably on this.
Are we all set? And it's a majority, not a two-thirds? I understand it's a majority vote. All those in favor of Article 26, please raise their hands.
Mr. Moderator, that wasn't in the motion. The motion is what was read.
Did you hear that? That wasn't actually part of the motion, so we're all set.
Mr. Moderator, I believe when you read the article, you read it, but it wasn't in the motion.
That's correct. I read it in the article, but it was not in the motion. Okay, Mr. Williams? Thank you. And I'm advised by legal counsel it is a majority vote.
Mr. Moderator, it's a majority vote. Mr. Moderator, there's the reference to 40 Section 5B, and 40 Section 5B involves the two-thirds vote, but there's not a 40 Section 5B account, so we're all set.
Let's try that vote again. If you have a comment, please come forward.
Who just called?
So what is the name of the fund?
The name of the fund is as read in the article, Open Space. This actually was a conversation, and the Agricultural Commission requested that we open it up a little bit more. It is named Open Space.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please raise their cards. Down hands. Those opposed? It is a vote, and I so declare it. Mr. Moderator, please.
Article 27, to choose all necessary town offices and committees.
Mr. Moderator, I move to choose all necessary town officers and committees.
Does this motion receive support? Recommendation of the Finance, please.
Finance Committee recommends favorably on this article.
Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion on this article? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Raise your cards. Sorry, it's getting late. All those in favor, all those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to declare my nominations for the Finance Board, and this year's appointments will be, Carol will be going back on in a 2-year seat there. We're going to have Peter O'Malley from Glenwood Road go on as a 3-year seat. David Lucier has to be reappointed because he went on mid-season, and he's going on as a 3-year spot. And the other one that will be going on as a 3-year spot will be Ted Purcell from Sassawana. Those are my appointments for the Finance Board. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. A second. All those in favor, please raise your cards. All those opposed, same sign. Please turn your cards in. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for coming. Don't forget to vote Monday.